regarding November 5th referendum articles. We'll start with pledge of allegiance. We're here to hear any public comment or any of the referendums we go through. Simple as that. And we get going.
Yes, so we have a few staff members that are going to kind of handle the initial summary of the referendum article, and then people can ask questions. I'm playing pinch hitter for Paul Plummer tonight, our harbor master and marine resources coordinator. He's been working with the Department of Marine Resources and with our town clerk's office to update our shellfish ordinance, our shellfish license ordinance. In Maine, you can have your own municipal shellfish program if you have an ordinance. So Harpswell has had one for a number of years. In fact, if you look at the title page of this document, at least this version began in 1981, and it has been amended multiple times. It's typically rare to go without a year and not have a shellfish ordinance amendment. Things are always kind of fluid and changing. But some of the things we needed to do to update our shellfish ordinance was to change the definition of clam flats. That was not considered the proper terminology anymore, and the state is asking us to use intertidal shellfish habitat. And so we now have essentially caused that to be the definition of what was previously a clam flat in Harpswell. The other area that we were asked to address had to do with defining what a senior resident license meant, and that would have been anyone who was 65 years of age or older and had physically resided in Harpswell for at least 6 months prior to an application for a license. And then we also had to define a senior non-resident, and that is someone who is 65 who does not meet the definition of a resident in Harpswell. Additionally, the town had been giving out what were called lifetime recreational licenses, and those were given out to people who were 65 years of age or older. And while the state didn't object to us having this category, they did not want it to be an automatic, you never have to come in and apply once you receive one. So the change is that if someone is in this category, they have to come in once a year, make an application. The select board may decide not to charge a fee for that particular type of license, but they still have to come in every year. They're not automatically going to receive one. I think that's essentially what we're presenting tonight. I don't know if there are any specific questions, and I would try to answer them if I could, or I would ask the town clerk, Kathy Dowdy, who's here to answer any questions you might have about the licensing procedure. I think we are considering this housekeeping, so nothing really substantially changing in policy, just kind of cleaning up the language.
Spike Highwell, Harpswell Neck. I have one of those lifetime licenses. It's kind of odd to have to come in every year, even though it's a lifetime license. Is the state really giving us a hard time about that, or are they really?
I might ask Kathy to respond to that. She went to some of the meetings.
So
yes,
then I would respectfully hope that you would not charge us a fee. I mean, that's kind of the deal with a lifetime license, is that, you know, you've done paid all your stuff for all these years, and then you get one perk, which is kind of nice. So happy to come in, happy to reapply. I prefer not to be charged, just on principle.
Hi, Kathy Dowdy, the town clerk. The state did say that we could no longer issue lifetime licenses to residents or non-residents over 65. So they will be required to come in and fill out an application each year to renew that license. And if it stands the way that it's been running for the past 20 years, there is no fee for that license. They just want to know how many people are actually over 65 and harvesting clams in the town of Harpswell. So it's for them to keep track of how many, what we have for acreage, the clams and everything. Is just biologically what they want to run and test.
Good. Mark, take it. Yeah. Yeah. So, our next one is the boat launch ramp. I think Mr. Iron is going to speak to this.
Good evening. I'm Mark Ironman, I guess former town planner and now sort of planning consultant. I will just try and run through things pretty quickly. If you have not, there are handouts over on the table. There's a narrative that walks through what's included in the project and how we came to this point and the financial issues. And there are two plans, one that focuses on the immediate boat launch area on the north side of the causeway, and the other that focuses on a larger area. Let me start by just doing a rundown of what is included in the project that would be funded with the loan proceeds if the article is adopted by town meeting. Essentially, there are a range of components. I'll go through them quickly. The primary proposal is to build a boat launch 20-foot wide with concrete plank on the north side of the existing causeway. The access to that boat launch will be from the causeway and then an access that goes off the causeway at an angle. The boat launch is designed to extend beyond the low tide line so that at least at low tide there will be some ability to use the boat launch. Their plan includes the installation of launch floats along the one side of the boat launch. The access is designed with a turnaround at the end. The radius of that turnaround has been recently increased to address concerns about larger commercial vessels being able to be launched so that you can come off of the causeway, down the access road, around the loop, and back down the ramp. There is provision for a few parking spaces on the causeway, one for handicapped accessibility, one for loading and unloading. There are proposed improvements to the causeway that include an improved pedestrian access along the southern edge of the causeway, and what's called a stub pier at the end of the causeway out by where the bollards are now that would allow a future ramp and floats to be installed if anybody ever wanted to do it. That's essentially the boat launch. The project also includes providing parking for vehicles with trailers. The paved area uphill from the bandstand will be expanded to accommodate approximately 30 vehicles with trailers in double-length parking stalls. And during the demolition of the Navy Pier, the town built a gravel, heavy-duty gravel road through the lower meadow that was used to haul all of the demolition material out from the demolition of the Navy Pier. The proposal is to reopen that little piece of it down by the waterfront so that vehicles with trailers can use that route rather than going on the existing access road by the bandstand and beach, etc. So that's essentially the proposal. This is a project that's been over 15 years in the making. When the town acquired Mitchell Field from the Navy, it conducted a public process to develop a master plan. One of the key recommendations of that was to develop a boat launch on the north side of the causeway and to develop parking for trailers up in the area where it's now proposed. So essentially, it's taken the town 17 years to get here, but we might be at that point. The estimated cost for the project at the current time is just about $2 million. The costs have escalated significantly, and anybody who's followed the construction costs articles in the media about schools and roads and what have you understand that the cost of construction has escalated dramatically. That $2 million is sort of what we might call an all-in cost. It includes the preliminary engineering, the design, preparation of bid documents, the construction of the facility, the payment of a wetland mitigation fee, oversight of the construction of the facility, assuming that it's bid and under contract. That price also includes a cost escalator, anticipating that construction of the project would occur if the article passes a town meeting over the winter of 25-26. One of the conditions of the Army Corps of Engineer permit is that there's a limited window during the winter that any in the water work has to be done. The cost estimate also includes a substantial contingency factor in the amount of 20% of the construction costs. That figure is in the range of $300,000 contingency. The town's engineering consultant has recommended carrying that number because of the uncertainty of bid prices in this environment. Let's see, what else? The town has been planning for the construction of this facility, I'm going to call it actively planning, for the last 6 or 7 years. The town meeting has set aside money in a Mitchell Field reserve account a number of times. There's about $492,000 in that reserve account. The town has also obtained 2 what are called SHIP grants, Small Harbor Improvement Program grants, from the Maine Department of Transportation. that have a total value of about $357,000, which means that the funding that has been available is about $850,000 versus an estimated $2 million construction cost. Some money has already been spent on the design and permitting of the project. When people ask why it has taken so long, the town received notice. Today is Thursday, October 3rd. We received notice on October 1st that the Army Corps of Engineer permit that was applied for 2.5 years ago was finally issued. And so that's the kind of the reality of the timing of the process. If you compare the estimated cost, the amount that's needed to complete the project, and the available funding, there is a funding gap of about $1,150,000, which is what the warrant article asks the town to approve, authorizing the select board to borrow that money. And I believe the term that's been discussed is a 10-year loan that would add, if I think the calculation that's in the handout is about 6 cents per thousand to the current tax rate.
Mills J. and North Island, thanks. One question is, what is the expected use of the ramp? Like, how many people are expected to be using it let's say over a year? And are there any plans for cost recovery of any amount? Are there fees going to be charged for use? And then related to that, what are the expected annual maintenance costs or operating costs for the wharf?
I don't think we don't have any way of judging how many people are going to be using it. I know the commercial haulers are interested in it, but weekenders, I know Belfort Marina is full up. Garrison Cove on Bailey Island, there's no parking, there's no, you can launch your boat, but you can leave. Same with Mackerel Cove. Lookout Point has some parking, Holbrook Street has no parking, so this will be one of the only boat ramps in town where you can actually go there, park your vehicle for the day and go off in the water.
And I don't know how it works, but is it typical that there's no charge for the use of the ramp or any kind of?
There's been no talk of that. Kind of like Mere Point operates the same way. They have a similar ramp over there.
Thanks.
Hi there, Catherine Gilly, County Server. I just wanted to say to this, certainly, like you said, the commercial fishing industry has brought in, I think in 2022, the commercial fishing industry landed about $38 million in landings in Harpswell. The commercial fishing industry, as far as that, there's no all-tide launch for over 30 miles. Excuse me. And again, there's also no launches with parking or little parking, if there's any. So certainly something like this could bring huge benefits to the commercial industry, being able to haul out and things of that sorts with their boats and things like that. This is something that, as far as the increase to it, I think it amounts to either $5 or $6 per $100,000 in value. So thinking of that is something that I think people should consider as far as the benefits to the commercial industry and what the commercial industry also brings to the town, and comparing all of that. So it's definitely something that I see more benefits than costs to, and I think that that should be something to consider.
Thanks. Anybody else on this?
Ned Simmons. Has there been any thought to increasing the hours of the availability down there? It seems to me that that's one thing that's already limited the use of, well, for instance, the dinghy rack down there. I see there's been one or two dinghies there, and I think the fact that you can only use it during daylight hours may limit the usability for a lot of folks.
I think if this gets approved, that'll be the discussion of how we're going to go about it.
The other, I guess related to that also, has there been any study, as I understood it, one of the reasons for this was particularly for the commercial fishermen to be able to haul out in bad weather. Has there been any study or estimate made on what the capacity would be? You know, how many boats could you actually get out when there's bad weather imminent? Is it really going to make a dent in that kind of demand?
I can tell you this, the storms we had last year, Dolphin was, I don't know how many boats they hauled in a short period of time and just stacked them up until the storm went by back in January. So it would be a great spot for that because they wouldn't have to wait for the tides.
The Dolphin would use that
Dolphin
rather than their own ramp.
In Funiscon.
Yeah. And I guess one thing I wondered about was how many boats would they haul? Would there be a place available for them to stack up boats there on the field, or would they have to haul them someplace else?
Spike could probably answer that.
Spike Highwell again, Mitchell Field Committee. I think what you're talking about is sort of an extreme event, which we're going to see more of, no doubt. But I don't think there's any, you know, how Mitchell Field is operated with the boat launch is still a work in progress. And part of it's going to depend on how heavy the use is. You know, we talked about having a monitor during the summer and that kind of business. And the question of whether we can charge a fee is we can only charge a nominal fee because it's we're using state funding to help build the launch. So, you know, anybody can come from anywhere and use it. Some people don't like that concept, but I'm a person who goes other places and other towns and uses state boat launches and others. So, but if we have an event, my guess is that we have an event where we need to get boats hauled out and people, and the haulers are willing to come over to Mitchell Field and pull boats over there, we'll just stack them. You know, there's a lot of room there. It's a one-off event usually. If it happens, it happens, and we'll just figure it out from there. We're not going to quibble, you know, about, you know, how close we keep the boats or whatever. We'll just get them out as best we can. If we have to stack them along the road, we would. I mean, it's what we would do as a community to keep things going. So, anyway, I hope that is.
Good answer.
We did talk some about having a fee, but that would require having an attendant, hiring somebody to be there for that.
But as Spike mentioned, there's state and federal money involved, so we can't charge a fee anyway. So it's off the table. Anything else on that one?
Relative to the hours of use, we've been sunrise to sunset. There's going to be undoubtedly people who are going to want to put their boat in and go out for a day or two or three. They're going to be overnighting, and we have a permitting process in place that you can fill out online and basically put a placard on your car. And so we just need to know who's there. We've had people who did not do that, and it caused a lot of running around to figure out whether they were actually out on the water, where were they, whatever, and they were also parked in the wrong place. So we think that system's worked pretty well so far. Gina's here, but anyway, so that stays in place. And again, I think it'll be a work in progress a little bit as we go along to see how it plays out.
Spike, I do believe fees could be charged at
Yes,
this
I
location.
said they could. It would be
Okay, yeah,
nominal.
we just haven't.
I don't know, I forget what the state rule is.
Yeah, there's some formula perhaps, but.
5 times what the residents would pay, and if you're paying 0 as a resident, it's that 5 times 0 is still 0.
I'm Ann Standridge, South Harpswell, and I know right now that Mitchell Field is open sunrise to sunset. If we're going to have fishermen using that boat ramp, and that is a needed thing that we need, we're going to have to change the hours, are we not, for opening of Mitchell Field. My sister is on the Mitchell Field Committee, and she goes and opens the field first thing in the morning. But there may be fishermen fishing who come in after sunset. How are they going to get in if the gates are locked? Same thing early in the morning. How will they get in to go out to their boats if the gates are locked? Some accommodation, I would think, needs to be done for that.
Thank you.
Regarding the current overnight parking situation, I find it rather cumbersome. Last time I checked, I believe you have to sign in a couple days before, so you have to plan. I just don't think that's practical for a lot of folks. I mean, I would use the place, for instance, to run out and spend the night on the Goslings, paddle out, but I wait for good weather for that, and you can't often plan that far ahead. I understand the need to do that with large groups, with outfitters and so on, but I think, it seems to me, if you're going to spend this kind of money on the launch, there should be 24-hour access, or at least expanded access, and not such a cumbersome system for overnight parking. And this may all be premature, but that's just some of the concerns I have.
Okay. Well, as Spike said, it'll be a work in progress if this gets approved.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Nope. In that case, we'll move on. Who wants to take this one?
So the next article we're discussing is known as Article 4, and it's asking the town to appropriate what's left of our American Rescue Plan Act funds. We call them ARPA funds, and they were given to communities across the country to recover from the impacts and effects of the coronavirus. We weren't necessarily limited in the areas where we could utilize our funds. We received over $500,000. There's a really good spreadsheet on our table over there if you want to see how the voters of Harpswell have approved the expenditures of the ARPA funds to date. We currently have about $54,000 that the voters have never appropriated for a particular purpose, and we have what we believe to be about $14,000 remaining of unexpended funds in areas where we didn't need as much as we thought we needed. So pursuant to federal regulations, the town of Harpswell's legislative body, which are the voters, have to commit these funds to a specific purpose before the end of this year. We then don't have to spend them until the end of 2026, but we have to have something in place that shows a commitment to spend them for a certain purpose. And so we came up with a suggestion to the board, and the board approved, and we're recommending that it be used in the area of emergency services for equipment. Obviously, the 3 local fire entities that provide support to the town were definitely on board with this. So we can answer any specific questions you may have on that topic.
I see nothing. Authorization for the town to accept and disperse working waterfront resiliency grant funds.
Yeah, I think we want to put this in the category of housekeeping too. There are 6 entities in Harpswell that have been awarded working waterfront funds from the state of Maine, and the town is being asked just to serve as the fiscal sponsor of these funds. We're being overly cautious taking it to the town meeting for a vote. We will be working again with these entities. I've reached out to all of them personally. We'll really sit down in November and talk about how the process is going to work. but they are going to be able to get reimbursed for any work that they've done on their projects since the January storm. If they had pier or dock damage, anything that, got in the way of their ability to do business and as part of the application that they put in front of the state, they'll be able to recover those funds, and they also can use these funds in the future. Some of them have not yet started their projects. They've had a hard time getting contractors to give them estimates, can't get people to do the work yet. So the funds currently don't have any sunset provision, and we'll be able to work with these folks for as long as they need it.
How much time do I have? I'll be succinct. Monique Coombs, Orr's Island, but I'm also here tonight in my role as Director of Community Programs for the Maine Coast Fishermen's Association. Pretty sure everybody's probably familiar. We're at the big blue building on Pleasant Street. We work with commercial fishermen all along the coast. Our mission is to restore the fisheries in the Gulf of Maine and sustain Maine's fishing communities for future generations. I run 2 programs, Fisherman Wellness and Working Waterfront. So after the January storms, I was very, very busy. Well, I'm gonna make my notes, so. We worked with the DMR and other organizations to communicate with fishing communities about what their fishing businesses, specifically about what they needed to do in regards to reporting damage to FEMA and other places. I think I've said this before in other meetings too, but I'm just going to reiterate that FEMA funds are ineligible for commercial fishing businesses. Businesses that had flood zone insurance were denied their claims and then they were dropped. Because fishing businesses were not eligible for FEMA, they were told to get SBA loans. If they got an SBA loan, they were told they were required to get flood zone insurance. Yeah, it's hilarious, right? Okay. The DMR, because of this, worked their butts off to get $20 million into the rainy day fund. Getting that legislation passed was incredibly difficult because of politics and where money should be spent and how. But again, DMR and other organizations, including the Island Institute, Maine Coast Fishermen's Association, made a whole bunch of phone calls and it finally got passed. When we were going through the grant process with the DMR and DOT, we had some concerns because of the way that they were using metrics to decide which properties were most vulnerable. So they looked at properties that had 20 plus lobstermen as being sort of the most valuable and eligible for these properties. We were a little bit frustrated by that, DMR knows this, because there's so many different types of working waterfront that were even more vulnerable to storms and that were culturally significant and necessary for commercial fishermen to be able to do their businesses. They didn't get any funding. Because of that, organizations like the Island Institute and the Maine Coast Fishermen's Association had our own pool of funding. We had applicants, we gave them $5,000, no strings attached, to just be able to get to work because we estimate, along with the DMR, that 60 to 70% of the working waterfront along the coast of Maine was either lost or severely damaged. Harpswell was one of the hardest hit. When DMR finally and DOT put out the applications, MCFA actually hired temporary staff to be able to help commercial fishermen fill out the applications for this working waterfront resiliency fund. We actually had to go to some properties and say, hey, you're eligible for this, you should fill it out. Commercial fishing business, it's sort of a poor term for this, but it is the term, have a lot of learned helplessness when it comes to processes that involve the government, federal, state, or municipal, which means that even if they know that they can get help and that that help is accessible to them, they're less likely to do that because their experience has shown them that it doesn't matter what they do, they're not going to get the help that they need. On top of everything that's going on with the storms, we have had so many issues in the commercial fishing industry over the past decade. We have offshore development, we have potential gear changes, we have increasing regulations. Commercial fishing is one of the most regulated fish industries in the United States, more than oil and natural gas extraction, and more than pharmaceutical manufacturing. increased regulation, we got climate change, we got severe storms, we've got gentrification. All of these things are compounding stress on the commercial fishing businesses. I'm a little bit frustrated that this is going to referendum. Harpswell is the only town that is putting this to referendum. No other towns that are going through this process have required that. And as a matter of fact, I think most of them have probably already signed their contracts. I sent Chris Mayo a text, I haven't heard back from him to confirm that. In the scheme of things, is a month, 2 months, 3 months gonna make a difference at this point? Probably not, but this is just one more thing that fishermen are having to contend with. They have to wait. Some of these projects, they have started them already. They have spent a ton of money. Yes, they're waiting for contractors. They're waiting for everything. I mean, by the time they're gonna get this funding, it's gonna be a year after. It's gonna be January. And so I don't understand. I feel like it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back with this. I really appreciate everything that you guys have done to support us with the right to fish policy. But we've got to make it easier for these fishing businesses to be able to do the work and get back to work. It's been a rough year. Lobster landings are not great. The price is okay right now, but it's very frustrating. I think this is overly cautious, to use your words, and I'm also concerned that we're putting this at potential risk. So my question to you is also, if this gets turned down, because you cannot guarantee that it will pass. I also think it will pass, but you cannot guarantee that. If it doesn't pass, what is your plan?
We would probably get legal advice, Monique, on that issue. And I do appreciate you bringing the topic forward. We got the contracts from the state on September 17th, but the board and the staff had to work on a warrant article prior to that because we weren't sure what the language of the contract was going to look like, and so we were treating it similar to other grant programs. So again, you're right, we've been overly cautious, very low risk here. We hope there's broad support, obviously, in Harpswell for, I mean, this is such an easy role for the town to play here, and we'll be ready to start the day after the November 5th vote. So I do appreciate the point you're making.
I think we find it to be overwhelming. As a matter of fact, little boundaries here. A show of hands in Article 5, who would vote yes? Give you some idea of how it's going to turn out.
No, it's an unnecessary risk, and it's incredibly frustrating for the fishing industry to once again see this happening in Harpswell. And just to say too, I was worried this would happen, and it really sucks that it came to fruition. So, thank you. I definitely think it's really frustrating knowing that I drive past a sign that says Working Waterfront Community, and we are putting roadblocks in front of the Working Waterfront Community, especially where we're the only town that's doing so. I think overly cautious is a understatement for that, but certainly we can go with that word. It's very overly cautious. I think, like Monique said, it's putting additional hurdles in places where they shouldn't be, and it's just really frustrating. I think that this is something that, again, what happens if this doesn't? I understand that there's a small chance that it doesn't, but again, the fact that the town has come in and put this roadblock and created that small chance is really frustrating and another hurdle to those people. So it's something that is definitely, hopefully it goes through.
Anybody else on this? All right. Oh, there we go.
Hi, Mark Scantus, I'm down in Harpswell, and I guess I share the ladies' views because I go to work every day and I go by those signs. I think we should be doing our utmost for the fishermen and the fishing industry in this town, especially when I see those signs. And I think there's even a lot more that the town has to do to support the fishermen and other issues that are going on, not necessarily at this point, but I think it's a valid point. And if you know it's going to pass, then why even take that chance? and even put it up to a vote. So I think it's kind of a no-brainer that really shouldn't need to. Thank you.
Well, just to, back to what Chrissy said earlier, she called all of these stakeholders, and none of them are worried. The only one that's done a lot of work is Frankie Beekers, which, by the way, we bent over backwards to get his permits, and there was a problem. There was some boundary issues there, and you know, for government to get that done as fast as we did in a few weeks, this stuff isn't brought up. The things that we do for these fishermen doesn't really get acknowledged, but we do something like this, and they say, you know, we're blocking the way. Unlike a lot of these fishermen in town, I actually come from a fishing family in Harpswell for almost 300 years. I never feel like we're doing anything to stand in the way of fishermen in Harpswell. Yeah. Anything else on this one? Moving on? Definitely.
I think this is Mark Ironman. Solar issues.
Mark, would you like to speak to the solar?
Mark Harriman. This article is on the town meeting warrant to ask the voters whether they want to authorize the select board to have the ability to lease up to 5 acres of land at Mitchell Field for use as a commercial solar facility. This has nothing to do with a town facility or use. This is I guess you would call it a straight landlord-tenant arrangement. If the article passes, the select board would then be authorized to go through a competitive process to see if there's anyone interested in leasing land at Mitchell Field for a solar array, and to see whether the landlord-tenant arrangements are in the best interest of the town.
Anyone want to speak on this one?
Nelson Channing was on once again. So I'm kind of curious about this, because the guy that was proposing to do this solar thing that came to the select board, I mean, I just felt the lease terms that he was offering seemed ridiculously low. And then I understand from the write-up that we informally solicited bids, and only the original person responded. So what are the terms that you're thinking about for putting out an RFP, and what feedback did you get from the other potential investors that were contacted?
Well, the only feedback I got was from Revision Energy saying, we'd probably offer you something different than what we initially proposed. But since what the town did was an expression of interest, it was not a formal RFP, they weren't going to put their cards on the table, so to speak. So we really didn't discuss what those terms might be, but they said they would be better than what they initially proposed.
And do you expect other people to come forward with a formal RFP? Because it seems...
I think the fact that we didn't get other responses, you know, even through this expression of interest approach, says that there may not be a lot of interest in that site.
So when I guess the article is saying on terms acceptable to the town, how are you thinking about that? What are those? What would be acceptable terms? If you have one bidder, it becomes take it or leave it.
It would really be up to the select board. They would probably get some type of consultant to give them some input and expertise on the issue. You know, if the voters say that they want the select board to entertain a formal RFP process, then they would do that. And then they would make the decision about whether or not they thought that was going to be good value for the town or not.
Okay, I mean, I like the idea, so I'm not arguing against it. I think it's a good idea. I'm just sort of, the way this thing has evolved, it seems to me it's been somewhat I can't figure out if it's the underlying economic value of 5 acres of brownfield land close to population centers that ought to be drawing higher bids. So the fact that there's no other interest kind of creates a question mark in my mind.
You'll probably notice that referendum that the select board, the three of us, are not recommending this.
Philip Connor. I am more favorable towards this than everybody else. I'm the one in all the votes you see. I think we should support this because we need revenue down there. We're talking about now having a bond, having ongoing expenses of operating the boat launch, and there'll be other things that will come along. We're kind of numb to the values, but this is $500,000 that we'll get over a period of time, and we're talking about, I don't know, maybe we're numb to, that doesn't sound like much money now, but it is $500,000, and it would help things that go on in Mitchell Field. Also, we have a commitment to lease about the same, and I'm not in favor of whatever, I think this thing came out with more acreage in your RFP you had. I think if it is limited to 5 acres, what you would get out of that based on the initial preliminary offering that you had, you would get more money than we're getting out of our other Marine Business District tenant, and we should count this as being our commitment to the Marine Business District, so that we wouldn't do any more business operations down there besides this. And I think if it gets located on the upper side of the field, up above, as much above the garden area as you can, I don't think it's that bad will be that bad of an appearance, or it won't hinder views of the water and so forth from Mitchell Field. Also, when you think about what that field started off as really an environmentally negative situation, it would be a nice recovery for it to come back and be an environmentally positive thing. So I think we need the money. It won't hurt anything down there. It would take a space that other marine business might take up, and it produces as much money as we're getting now from other usage down there. And I think the positive environmental use would be a good thing. Thank you.
Oh, I think somebody's ahead of you.
I'm Mose Price, I live on the Neck, I'm a member of the Mitchell Field Committee. I think I'm on my 3rd term on the committee, so I've been involved in the discussions of the development of the field and the launch. And I don't remember the exact year, but when Jane Covey was the chair of the committee, she asked me to work with some others on the committee to rewrite, not the right word, to update the master plan for Mitchell Field. The original master plan, which I think was dated in 2007 or 10? 10 probably. 7, whatever. All right. There was part of it said that a solar field could be something that would be considered in the future. And a number of years ago, there was a proposal for a small portion of the field for a solar array that would provide the town with enough electricity to run all its facilities. It was to be dedicated to that purpose, no other. So we started to look at the field to see where it might be reasonable to site this thing, and the best place was down after the road curves in front of the generator building and then it heads to the water. There was a concavity there, sort of like an amphitheater. And we could have put perhaps a triangular shaped array in there, which would not have blocked the view, which would have been fairly hidden from view by most people using the field. that would have produced enough electricity for the town's purposes, and it would have been the town's purpose. The select board decided that was not the best way to go with this, and they looked into getting into another one of those multi-community things where they sort of rent the electricity production from that field. And this proposal came along, and when we updated the master plan, we kept the solar panel, solar field idea in there just as an open-ended possibility for consideration if anybody ever came to us and proposed it. So when this proposal came along from revision, they were talking about 5 acres because it's a brown field and there's some kind of special kickback they get for developing that for solar piece. And the proposal was to put it in the upper meadow. And if you look at 5 acres outlined on an overlay on the upper meadow, it takes up most of that space. And it would be not hidden from view. It wouldn't be down in a cavity in the ground. It would be in plain sight. Anybody walking along the perimeter road down towards the generator building would have to go past it to be visible from the road. And it would not be dedicated to the town's purposes. It would just be for anybody who was going to buy electricity produced by that field by revision. Yes, there is a fee they're going to pay on an annual basis, which may escalate and it may amount to some kind of money. But every survey that we have done as a committee and all the public input we get when we're down there working as volunteers on the field from the people who use the field is keep it open recreational space. And the 5-acre solar array, which if you see the overlay, and I wish we had that panel to show you, is a lot of space. There are 100+ acres down there, but there's a lot of woods and the road area and all that. 5 acres is not a small amount of the open space that's available for recreation and general purposes. So we did a straw vote of the committee. I think we have 9 members and 8 of us were opposed to this for the reasons that I just outlined. And I remain steadfastly opposed to it, and I hope that the town will agree with the Board of Selectmen and the majority of the Mitchell Field Committee. Thank you.
Catherine Gilly, Cundy's Harbor. The town certainly proved that, or showed that they were not in the energy market when they voted the LNG terminal down. That definitely would have brought in the town a lot more funds than what this solar array is quoted at bringing in. It definitely also really kind of put a rift, I should say, in the town as well at the time. And it's definitely something that I can certainly see something like this doing the same, especially for many reasons that the previous gentleman just said. The view of it, many people do not want to come to Harpswell to see a solar array. A lot of people are actually getting frustrated with driving down, through the woods and through the fields of northern Maine and just seeing arrays after arrays after arrays. I don't think that a lot of people want that, especially for the very small amount of funds that it's going to bring to the town. And also leasing lots for $5,000 is something that, quite frankly, sign me up. Let's go and do that if that's really going to be the cost of it, because I can use 1 acre, I can garden on that, and I can make a lot more money than $5,000. So I definitely think cost-wise, it's something that I think more, I don't want to say hinders, but there's more downfalls to this than benefits there are to it. So that's kind of all I wanted to say to that. Thank you.
Thanks. Anything else? Anybody else? All right. I believe that. Into the referendum comments. Hearing.
We want to take a recess, 10-minute recess, special meeting, Okay. Close the public hearing. We're going to close the public hearing.
All right, at this point, we'll close the public hearing. Yep, at this point, we'll open up the select board meeting. Approval of the minutes. Approve the minutes. had it here somewhere. What am I gonna do with it?
It's an election maybe not. I don't know. I think Mary Ann is still making that change. They just have a few items. She might.
I move the appointment of Tom Burke, Patty Carrier as election ballot clerks. And secondly, move the appointment of Nelson Barber to the Fire and Rescue Planning.
My second. Okay, you second all in favor?
Yes.